The Silence of the Lambs. Imagine hunting a killer, and the only person who can help you catch him is another killer. Picture this. You're a rookie FBI agent, and your job is to crawl inside the mind of a murderer by sitting face to face with someone who's far worse. That's the nightmare Clarice Starling steps into. She's tasked with finding Buffalo Bill, a serial killer who abducts women and skins them. The FBI has no leads, except one man locked away in a cell. Dr. Hannibal Lecter. Lecter isn't just a killer. He's a genius, a psychiatrist who understands human fear, desire, weakness, and devours it, literally. When Clarice first meets him, he's polite, articulate, almost charming. But behind the glass wall of his cage, there's something in his eyes. Not madness, but hunger. Their conversations are battles. Lecter offers her cryptic clues about Buffalo Bill, but in exchange, he demands pieces of her soul. He forces her to talk about her childhood, her trauma, the screaming of lambs in the night. Every word is a test. Is she strong enough to play his game? Or will she be consumed by it? Meanwhile, the book cuts to Buffalo Bill himself, alone in his basement sewing a woman's suit out of skin, lowering his next victim into a pit, telling her to rub lotion on her skin. It's not just disturbing, it's intimate. You're trapped in that house, with him, and you can't look away. What makes The Silence of the Lambs so terrifying isn't just the violence. It's the way it forces us to look at human monsters. Hannibal Lecter isn't a slasher villain hiding in the shadows. He's brilliant, refined, civilized. Buffalo Bill isn't a demon. He's a man, broken, twisted, horrifyingly human. And that's the true horror. Evil doesn't always wear a mask. Sometimes it smiles, speaks softly, and stares at you through bulletproof glass. Clarice survives the hunt, but the silence she carries, the screaming of those lambs, never goes away. Perfume. The story of a murderer. Jean-Baptiste Grenouille is born in the filth of 18th century Paris, unwanted and unloved. From the first moment of his life, he is a survivor, a rat in human form. But Grenouille is no ordinary child. He has a gift, or perhaps a curse, an unmatched sense of smell. He can detect the faintest trace of a flower a mile away, or the unique musk of a person passing through a crowd. Scents are his language, his world, his obsession. But there's something missing. Grenouille himself has no scent. To others, he's a blank, an absence, a shadow. It feeds his alienation, making him believe that to truly exist, he must craft a fragrance so perfect it will grant him power, love, and recognition. As he grows, Grenouille becomes a perfumer's apprentice, mastering the craft. But he's not content with flowers and oils. He hungers for the essence of humans, specifically the radiant, intoxicating scent of young women. His obsession leads him down a path of murder. One by one, he kills virgins, extracting their fragrance by methods as gruesome as they are meticulous. Each death is not just a crime, but a step toward his ultimate creation, a perfume that can command the hearts of all who inhale it. The climax comes when Grenouille is captured, sentenced to execution for his killings. But instead of meeting the guillotine, he unleashes his masterpiece. Just one drop of his perfume turns the jeering mob into worshippers. They collapse in ecstasy, overwhelmed by love and adoration for him. He is no longer a criminal. He is a god. In that moment, Grenouille holds absolute power, and yet, it means nothing. He feels no joy, no satisfaction. Even as he becomes adored by all, he remains empty. His greatest triumph exposes the hollowness inside him. Power cannot replace the love he was denied at birth. The novel's ending is as shocking as it is poetic. Grenouille returns to the place of his birth, surrounded by thieves and beggars. Instead of fleeing, he pours the remainder of his perfume over himself. The crowd, entranced, tears him apart in a frenzy of love so pure it becomes cannibalistic. They consume him until nothing remains. Grenouille achieves his goal. He is loved so completely that people cannot help but devour him. And yet, it is also the ultimate irony. To be adored, he had to cease to exist. Watchmen. The story begins like a murder mystery. A masked vigilante, the comedian, is thrown to his death. But his death is just the first crack in a much bigger nightmare. In Alan Moore's Watchmen, superheroes aren't gods. They're flawed, broken, and terrifyingly human. The narrative jumps between the lives of retired vigilantes. Rorschach, the brutal detective who sees the world in black and white. Dr. Manhattan, a literal god who's drifting away from humanity. Ozymandias, the so-called smartest man alive. And Lori and Dan, who cling to their old costumes to find meaning in a decaying world. At its heart, Watchmen asks one question: who watches the Watchmen? If people with masks and powers enforce justice, who holds them accountable? That question leads to one of the darkest endings in graphic novel history. Ozymandias, seeing the world spiraling toward nuclear war, devises a plan to save humanity. His solution isn't peace or diplomacy, it's mass murder. He fakes an alien attack on New York City, killing millions instantly. The horror unites the United States and the Soviet Union against a common enemy, ending the Cold War in one bloody stroke. When the other heroes uncover the plan, it's already too late. They stand in the ruins, realizing that despite the atrocity, it worked. Nuclear annihilation has been averted. But at what cost? Dr. Manhattan, detached yet godlike, agrees to leave Earth. Lori and Dan resign themselves to living quietly, unable to undo what's been done. And Rorschach, the one man who refuses to compromise, is vaporized by Manhattan rather than allow him to expose the truth. The ending is devastating not because of the violence, but because of the moral vacuum it leaves. Ozymandias asks Manhattan if he did the right thing. Manhattan replies with chilling ambiguity, "Nothing ever ends." And that's the real horror. The so-called savior of humanity slaughtered millions, and the world will never know. Peace is built on a lie. The heroes we look to for justice became complicit in silence. Watchmen ends not with triumph, but with dread. The understanding that the world is safe only as long as a monstrous secret is kept, and that human nature ensures it won't stay hidden forever. The crash. What if the car crash wasn't an accident? J.G. Ballard's crash isn't just disturbing. It's deliberately designed to make you recoil. At its core, it's about a group of people who find sexual and spiritual meaning in car crashes. For them, twisted metal and shattered glass aren't accidents. They're a new language of intimacy. The narrator, named after Ballard himself, falls under the spell of Vaughn, a charismatic, deranged man obsessed with the idea that technology and desire have fused in the modern world. Vaughn dreams of the ultimate crash, a collision with Elizabeth Taylor, immortalized in fire, blood, and fame. Through Vaughn, the narrator becomes immersed in this underground cult of eroticized violence. They reenact crashes, fetishize scars, and worship the mingling of machine and flesh. The language is clinical, almost sterile, which makes the grotesque acts described feel even more shocking. What begins as horror slowly morphs into inevitability. The more Ballard's narrator is pulled in, the more he sees crashes not as tragedies, but as sacred moments of transformation. Highways become cathedrals, crumpled bodies become icons. And do you know the darkest part isn't just the deaths? It's the philosophy underpinning them. The characters believe that in a society dominated by technology, accidents are the purest form of human expression left. Each crash is both a ritual and a prophecy, a way of breaking free from the numbness of everyday life by embracing annihilation. The climax comes when Vaughn, in his pursuit of transcendence, stages his final collision. He crashes his car deliberately and dies, his body fused with the wreckage he worshipped. It should feel like an ending, but instead, it feels like a beginning. The narrator doesn't recoil from Vaughn's death. He embraces it. In the closing pages, he's already fantasizing about his own crashes, his own future deaths, with the same eerie devotion. What started as someone else's obsession has become his own religion. The novel ends without redemption, without hope, just a chilling certainty. In this world, technology, sex, and death are no longer separate. They've merged into one. Ballard doesn't offer resolution. He leaves the reader trapped in the same place as his characters, staring at the wreckage, half in horror, half in awe, wondering if this is the true face of the future. Akira, Katsuhiro Otomo. The end of the world doesn't come with fire falling from the sky. It begins in Neo-Tokyo, a city rebuilt after a mysterious explosion destroyed the old one. A city where gangs roam the streets, politicians drown in corruption, and the military hides secrets too dangerous to speak of. That's the world of Akira. At its heart are two boys, Kaneda and Tetsuo. Friends, rivals, brothers in arms in a biker gang tearing through the neon streets. But when Tetsuo collides with a strange child during a chase, everything changes. The accident awakens something inside him, a power so destructive, so uncontrollable, that it threatens to consume not just him, but the entire city. Tetsuo isn't just strong, he's evolving. His psychic abilities grow faster than his mind can handle. What begins as a surge of strength becomes hallucinations, uncontrollable rages, and the terrifying sense that he's no longer fully human. Kaneda, reckless but loyal, is pulled into the fight, not just for Tetsuo's soul, but for Neo-Tokyo's survival. Hovering over them all is the legend of Akira, the name whispered like a curse, the child whose powers caused the original Tokyo explosion. Officially, Akira doesn't exist. In reality, he's been hidden away, a weapon too dangerous to kill, too powerful to unleash. But when Tetsuo's mutation spirals out of control, the military's desperate grip on Akira begins to fail. Otomo doesn't hold back. Akira is body horror on a cosmic scale. Tetsuo's transformation isn't sleek or heroic. It's grotesque. Flesh and machinery twist together, his body becoming a monstrous mass that mirrors his collapsing humanity. But beneath the violence and spectacle, Akira is a story about control. Who holds power? The government that hides the truth? The rebels who want to expose it? Or the individuals who discover forces inside themselves too great to master? The manga was published in the 80s, but it feels like prophecy. Questions about authoritarianism, technology, and the destructive hunger for progress pulse through every panel. And unlike most stories of heroes versus villains, Akira offers no easy answers. Just chaos, rebirth, and the haunting suggestion that destruction may be the only path to evolution. Akira isn't just a manga. It's a nuclear explosion on the page, and once you've read it, you don't walk away the same. The Collector. Frederick Clegg is a socially awkward clerk, invisible to the world, until he wins a fortune in the lottery. But instead of building a life, he uses his newfound wealth to indulge a twisted obsession. Miranda Gray, a young art student he's been watching from afar. Frederick convinces himself he's not like other men. He doesn't want to hurt Miranda, he tells himself. He just wants to collect her, the way he collects butterflies. Quietly, methodically, he buys a secluded country house and prepares a locked basement room. When he finally kidnaps Miranda, he frames it as an act of love. He gives her clothes, books, even art supplies, but always under his control, always in his collection. The horror of The Collector lies in the psychology. Frederick doesn't see himself as a villain. He insists he's misunderstood, that Miranda will grow to love him if given time. Miranda, meanwhile, struggles between defiance and survival. She tries to manipulate him, to play along just enough to escape. But every plan collapses against Frederick's stubborn delusion. As weeks pass, the walls close in. Miranda grows weaker, both physically and emotionally. A brief glimmer of hope comes when she nearly escapes. But Frederick's paranoia catches her. He grows more controlling, more desperate to keep his butterfly pinned in place. The novel's ending is devastating. Miranda falls ill with pneumonia, her body wasting away in the damp basement. Frederick, faced with a choice, refuses to call a doctor. He convinces himself it's her fault for not loving him. When she finally dies, he buries her quietly, showing no real grief, only disappointment that his experiment failed. And then comes the coldest twist. Frederick, narrating without a shred of remorse, begins to plot again. He's already found another young woman, another potential specimen. Miranda wasn't the one, but maybe the next girl will be. The collector ends not with justice, but with the terrifying promise of repetition. Frederick walks free, unpunished, ready to begin his cycle of obsession and control all over again. It's not just a story of kidnapping, it's a story of how self-delusion and entitlement can twist into pure evil. The monster isn't a stranger lurking in the shadows. It's the quiet man no one notices, waiting for his next collection. Beloved. Imagine feeding your child, bathing her, talking with her every day, and then remembering you killed her years ago. That's the horror of Beloved. Beloved is set after the American Civil War, following Seath, a woman who escaped slavery with her children. Freedom should mean safety, but the past won't let her go, because when slave catchers came for her family, Seath made a choice: death over bondage. She tried to kill all her children so they wouldn't be dragged back. Only one died, her baby girl. Years later, Seath's house is haunted. The baby's ghost stomps, cries, and screams through the walls. And then a young woman appears. She calls herself Beloved. She knows things she shouldn't know. She behaves like a child trapped in a grown body. She is the baby come back. But Morrison doesn't write Beloved as a monster. She's seductive, fragile, terrifying, needy. She wants Seath's love, her attention, her whole self. And Seath gives it, letting Beloved consume her life while the community around her watches in silence. The horror isn't the supernatural. It's the weight of slavery's trauma, a system so brutal it twists love itself into violence. Seth's murder isn't treated as insanity, but as a consequence of a world where mothers had no control over their children's bodies, where death felt like the only mercy left. Beloved is gothic, yes, but it's also history, the kind of horror America would rather forget. Morrison forces you to sit with it, to see how trauma never stays buried. It comes back, it eats at you, it names itself, and it asks, "You loved me enough to kill me, but will you love me enough to live with me?" A Little Life. A Little Life begins like a familiar story of friendship. 4 young men in New York chasing careers, love, and meaning. There's J.B. the artist, Willem the actor, Malcolm the architect, and Jude the quiet, brilliant lawyer. But slowly, the narrative narrows, until all the light and weight of the book falls on Jude Saint. Francis. Jude is extraordinary, intellectually gifted, professionally successful. But his brilliance hides a devastating secret. His childhood was not just difficult, it was unspeakably abusive. A life of exploitation, cruelty, and trauma left him scarred, both physically and emotionally. The people who should have cared for him instead treated him as less than human. What follows is not a story of healing, but of survival. Jude builds walls of silence around his past, even with the friends who love him most. He endures, but he cannot escape. Self-harm becomes his constant companion. Every kindness shown to him is met with suspicion. Every relationship poisoned by the belief that he is unworthy of love. For a time, it seems like Willem might save him. Their friendship deepens into something more, and Jude experiences fleeting moments of peace. But tragedy strikes again. Willem dies suddenly in a car accident, and with him goes Jude's last tether to hope. The final act is a slow, heartbreaking collapse. Jude cannot bear the weight of his memories, his guilt, his self-hatred. Surrounded by friends who would give anything to save him, he retreats further into despair. His body deteriorates from years of self-inflicted damage, and finally, he makes the decision that ends his story. he takes his own life. The novel doesn't end with redemption or closure. Instead, it leaves us with Willem's words, remembered by those left behind. You were the only thing I wanted. Jude was loved, but he could never believe it. What makes A Little Life so devastating is not just the tragedy, but the relentless way it refuses to soften the blow. It forces readers to confront the truth that not every wound heals, and not every story of survival ends in light. Sometimes, the darkness wins. It is one of the most harrowing, emotionally exhausting endings in modern literature. Unforgettable because it feels both cruel and painfully real. You think these books are dark? I bet you'll never say the same after watching Part 8 showing on the end screen.